welcome to the Next Best Picture podcast, where I am being joined today by composer Bobby Krlic. You might actually know him as the Haxan Cloak. But Bobby, what a special time for you to be joining us right now here on the podcast to be talking about your work on the Netflix series Beef.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Really exciting.
Right, I say this up at the top because you've got people watching the show on Netflix. You've got a film in theaters right now that you just did with Ari Aster with Beau Is Afraid. It just must be such an exciting time for you, for your music to be listened to by so many people across different mediums. Can you first just start off by telling me what that has been like the last couple of months?
Really fun. Really, they're just really great projects to be involved in. I think both saying something that's exceptionally pertinent, and yeah, they're both very different, very unique from each other. Um, and it's just been a real gift to be asked to help tell those stories.
Absolutely. So you're given the screenplay for Beef, you're reading through it, you're trying to figure out, okay,
Mhm.
how can I take my style and weave it into this story that you've been granted here? And one thing that I've noticed when I've listened to the score for this is that there seems to be almost like this simmering, ticking time bomb element of this escalating tension, but it's done in a very gentle, playful sort of way. You could tell me my read is totally off on that, but I wanted to
You're
yeah.
pretty bang on.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And there's lots of bang in this story too with Beef for sure. Talk to me a little bit about what your initial reaction was when you read the screenplay and yeah, what you felt you could bring to it as a composer.
Well, I read the screenplay, but then, I would say I think it was the same day. Sonny, the creator, actually came to my house, and we sat here in the studio and talked about it and played each other a bunch of music, and it just became very obvious to me that he was trying to say something that was really unique, and I think very current, that would speak to a lot of people right now, particularly of my generation. Um, and so I think musically, it was trying to do a lot of things. It's a complex show, and I think the heart of the show is that you know whatever people may seem like on the exterior, there's people contain multitudes, and there's people can occupy many different spaces and be many different people. And I think it was a really exciting thing to kind of be able to have certain musical motifs and marry them with other things, and subvert expectations, and really have the score kind of pivot, um, when you don't really expect it to, and to have something that kind of keeps you on your toes.
Sure. No, I completely agree with that. It definitely has a lot of layers to it because there are these moments where it just feels like there's unbelievable amount of chaos going on, but also too then you get these more gentle, quieter moments, whether it's a pluck on an acoustic guitar. But can you talk to me just a little bit about the way that you utilized, for lack of a better term, and you can tell me what you actually use, but it sounds like the banging on like trash cans or something to that effect. Can you talk to me a little bit about like different types of instruments that you implemented in this score to kind of give it that chaotic feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it was that. It was a lot of it was me kind of finding stuff around, and I have a room next to me here that's full of different drums and percussion and shakers and claves and all this kind of stuff. And then yeah, finding things outside or going up to the kitchen and bringing stuff down. And I just had microphones set up all over this room, and I would just, there's a TV in front of me here that you can't see, but I'd just throw a picture up and just start making rhythms and banging on stuff, and just trying to find, I think one thing that we kind of talked about, and that we really wanted to achieve, was kind of to have this score that does have these elements of, like, more kind of traditional band stuff, so guitar, bass, drums, piano, that kind of thing, but then to kind of throw in all this other stuff that kind of subverts that, and you don't really know what it is, but it's doing something to you, and it's a pulse and it's tension, and it's this kind of, like you said, it's like a ticking clock, but having all these elements kind of do that in a way where you can't really place it, as you're not really thinking so much about what it is, but how it's making you feel.
Right. So you said that you wanted to give it kind of like a band like sound at times. Was that influenced by the film's soundtrack, or was the film soundtrack influenced by your decision to approach the music in that way? Because there's so many great needle drops by bands that I grew up listening to, like these incredible rock anthems, especially that I just love throughout.
Yeah, definitely the latter. When I met Sonny, that was one of the first things that he kind of said to me. That every episode was going to have a very kind of bombastic, definitive needle drop at the end of it. And when we got to talking, it turned out that our kind of formative teenage years, we listened to exactly all the same stuff. So
Exactly.
we just were making Spotify playlists and sharing it with each other, and that definitely informed the tone of the score, to try and have something that could do all the things I was just saying, but also maybe some of it you can't really pick it apart from the, the needle drops, and so to have stuff that is in that world, and kind of doing this gray space between if it's source, if it's score, we don't really know.
Right, right. And a lot of music like that usually has to deal with pent up aggression and anger and releasing that in a cathartic manner. So, can you tell me a little bit about does how were you trying to translate that over to your score by essentially creating something that was going to follow the characters along this journey that they're going on, where they have bottled up emotions, and the score kind of also has to capture that feeling of
Yeah,
suppression but then cathartic release.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think so if you think about the opening scene of the show, episode one, when we're pushing in on Danny when he's in the hardware store, immediately from the get go, you have this dum 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 thing that's creeping in. That was the first thing that I wrote for the show. It turned into kind of, I just wrote this kind of 3-minute piece that started with that, kind of evolved into all this other stuff. And it was thinking about that. It was like, okay, well, and the show is very darkly funny, and Sunny and I definitely share that sense of humor. So I was also we were trying to make each other laugh, and it's this thing of like you just have this thing, and it was almost like a woodpecker, it's just chipping away the whole time, and almost to the point of like annoyance, where the audience is like, I wish this sound would go away. But it doesn't do that, and it doesn't do that for the characters, and it is this kind of turning corkscrew the whole time. But it was also important to have something that could be malleable and that we could have fun with it and take it to different places. So I think just having that kind of foundation of like, that's the tension, and we had this other thing which we referred to as a worm. And he was like, I want to feel like this worm that's just, it's a tension worm that's just wriggling inside Danny all the time. So you have this kind of little arpeggiated thing, and it's like a kind of thing. And we played it on synthesizer, on violin, on viola, on percussion. So having these different kind of elements of tension that can also be twisted to feel fun or exciting, and it can be augmented by a lot of other things.
Sure,
Kind of the
sure.
starting approach.
So you've worked on other television shows before. As I mentioned, you also have some film work. Can you talk to me about the number one difference that you experience as a composer working on 2 hour, or in the case of Beau Is Afraid, 3 hour long film versus a television show that could be double, triple the length of that? Or is there no difference and you approach each one exactly the same?
No, I think there's a big difference. And I would say for me personally, I'm sure it differs for every composer, but I kind of find that there is, if when working on a film, it's a very defined, like you say, kind of relatively short period of time in which you have to kind of encapsulate the story and the arc and everything that's happening. You have to be very kind of economic and succinct in the way that you want to tell that. Whereas I find that the difference with television is that, you know, you have 10 episodes. Sometimes those episodes are 30 minutes, sometimes they're an hour. So sometimes you get 10 hours to tell the story. And, you know, sometimes you can dig a little bit deeper, or you can be a little bit more cryptic and things can expand slower. And I definitely don't prefer one to the other. I think they're both awesome in their own ways.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Is there a particular track on the Beef score, soundtrack, if you will, that you are particularly proud of?
I'm proud of all of it. uh, you know, I think one that was really fun, honestly, is Chobros. And you know, it comes from like that's music that I think, given my other scoring work and particularly my solo records, that people will not really expect to hear from me. But that's, you know, that's music I've been into and making since I was 12 and 13 years old, when I first started playing guitar and being in bands and all that kind of stuff. So it was a really nice way to be able to sort of come full circle and pay homage to all this music that, you know, as a kid kind of made me who I am and kind of developed my musical voice. And so, yeah, I'm really, really proud of that one.
And is there a particular scene or track within the score that you were banging your head up against a wall? Maybe you wrote it, rewrote it, drew it all the way, start from scratch. Is there anything like that at all that brings back PTSD memories for you working on Beef?
You know what? It's funny because definitely on PTSD, but you know, are we giving away spoilers? Is that cool?
I think so. I think at this point, everyone's watched the show. Probably, it's not a week by week release. So,
well, spoiler alert, just in case. You know, there's a scene in episode 10. We're getting towards the end of the episode, and Danny and Amy are in the desert. It's getting to night time, and they're sound too lost, and they're just kind of talking about how they got here and the things that they think that they failed in their lives, and they can, you know, and that scene was really difficult to nail, because there's a really fine line between it being true and it being overly earnest. So that was one that took a few attempts, but I say it doesn't give me PTSD because, you know, there are some things when you get asked to rewrite where you know, you really feel like you nailed it, or you feel like the rewrite is coming from a place of fear or something else. But I would say that in particular was a place where every single rewrite was just getting closer to the intention of it and the real emotion of the scene. And so I'm actually like, it's not PTSD. It actually makes me really happy that we went the extra mile to get that really right.
okay, so you got no beef with anybody. So that's great to hear. And then we always like to ask our guests here what they have coming up next. I know we are looking forward to hearing what you're going to bring to Blue Beetle, which had its trailer release. It just got shown at CinemaCon yesterday. And I you've worked with Ari Aster now on 2 films. Is there a good chance you're going to get another phone call from him, or?
You know, I hope so. I love him dearly. He's become a great friend, and I think, you know, anything that he puts his mind to, I'd love to throw my hat in the ring. I just think he's a true author and a true genius and a great thinker. So
Absolutely.
Calls, I'll pick it up.
And is there like anything else you have upcoming in the future, another television show or anything like that that we can look forward to hearing from you?
Currently, no. We just actually yesterday finished recording the Blue Beetle, so that's the main thing on the slate right now, and I'm really excited about it.
Cool. Well, we're really excited to hear from you as well. I think it's going to be, at least I don't know, but we'll see. Radically different, probably, because it's a very, very unique film. Yeah, amongst everything that you've worked on so far. So, thank you so much for going into detail here about your work on Beef. It's been a really, really fascinating series to watch unfold over the last couple of weeks and seeing how people have been interacting with it. And then, of course, your work with Ari Aster, like I said before, also in its own category that, quite frankly, I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's on fire right now. So kudos to you, man. Great job.
Really appreciate that. And it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Take care. And thank you so much for the time.
You too.